promise of the future is an awesome force. My mentor worked this on me. He said, Jim Rohn, if you keep up these disciplines and if you keep up these skills, keep increasing productivity, learn how to work with people, do the job well, do the activity, learn to teach. He said, I promise you, you're going to have a unique place. I promise you. He kept saying that. I promise you. Things will all change. I promise you. A bank full of money. I promise you. A heart full of gratitude. I promise you. A family with unusual respect. I promise you. An audience that won't quit. And he just kept saying all of this stuff. I promise you. Take it from me. I've got the experience. I know. Person like you, your dedication. If you keep up this pace, the day will come. The day will come. And he painted this picture. I couldn't sleep nights the first year. Then I remember one day he said, one of these days you'll walk into a room full of people, and as you walk in the room, you'll hear someone say, that's him. That's the famous man. I thought, well, that could never happen to me. I was raised in obscurity, right? One of my first skills was milking cows. I mean, what's that got to do with walking in a room and have someone say, that's him, that's the man, the famous man? But sure enough, year by year, audience by audience, and book by book, as I traveled this journey, wow, that promise from this man started coming true. I just wish my mentor, Mr. Schoaf, was here to see this. Here's what he would say. I told you. I said, listen to what they're saying. I told you. I told you. Yeah, that's right. It's happening. Wow. I wonder how much further. I wonder how much more. That's a gift. Language that transports people into the future. So I'm asking you to do the same thing with your company, with your people that work for you, and especially your family, so that you can give them the promise of the future. They'll do extraordinary things if they can see. If they can't see, they'll take little steps. If they can see, they'll take giant steps.
You know, this is why I'm a huge fan of sort of peer organizations or mentor relationships. It's why having good friends is important. You know, you know, the friends who tell us we're crazy, you'll never be able to do it, you're nuts, why don't you go back and get a job? We start doubting ourselves. But the friends who say, you inspire me. I don't have the courage that you have to cut the cord like that and go do it. That's amazing. You got to stick with it. You got to stick with it, right? It's those friends. It's those relationships. Any successful CEO, any successful leader will talk about their mothers, their fathers, their friends, their wives, their husbands that stuck with them, believed in them. Those relationships are absolutely essential. You can have a limited success if you go it alone, and I think it's an unhealthy success. There are leaders who do it, but they take a huge number of pills in the morning, and depression is a large part of their being. It doesn't have to be that way.
Help them to see themselves better than they are. Sometimes we have to help people see themselves as they are. If your child is messed up, you got to say, hey, John, you have messed up. But here's the next clue, parents. Don't leave them in the mess. So they've messed up. How quickly could they turn it around? Almost overnight. What could be the promise of the future if they started walking a new road? Absolutely colossal and unbelievable. So we quickly go from saying, yes, you've messed up, no doubt about that, but here's how quickly you can recover. Here's how quickly you can multiply the future in a positive way versus the negative way that brought you to this poor place. See, the gift of language can do the most incredible things with a human being. Rescue them from oblivion, send them into the future with a picture of the promise, the possibilities. Don't be lazy in exercising these gifts. Someone say, well, how good do we need to be at it? As good as you possibly can. Someone says, well, this is only a child. What a better place to start. Correcting a few errors and building the promise of the future. We can't say it's only a child. This could be the next superstar. This could be the next person of high productivity that starts enterprises that employs millions. This next child, this child, properly corrected, properly inspired.
You know, one of the things that you pull out of the clinical literature, imagine that you have children who have a certain low-level amount of neurological trouble when they're infants. So something's gone wrong, maybe a little oxygen deprivation at birth, something like that. Something's gone a little bit wrong with their neurological development. Assuming that the damage isn't too severe, those children will stabilize and normalize if they have at least one well put together role model in their life. And so, one of the things that you do if you want to inspire others is get your act together, because you inspire most through example. It's much more powerful than words. Words are very powerful if they're also accompanied by example. But the best thing you can do is start putting things together around you. There's plenty of things to put together. It's a good meditative exercise, if you're, and I think this is the proper form of prayer, let's say, assuming that there is such a thing. A proper form of prayer would be, if you're not happy with your life, if you're miserable, you sit on the edge of your bed and you think, is there anything I can change in what I'm doing that is going to make this less awful than it has to be? Less awful than it might be? You have to ask that, with intent. And generally speaking, you'll get an answer almost immediately. There's something that you could put right that day that would make things slightly better than they are. And that's rule 4, which is compare yourself to who you were yesterday and not to who someone else is today. I don't believe that there's a person who exists who wouldn't receive an answer to that question if they genuinely asked it. And it's no different really than thinking. Like if you think, you have a problem, you think, you get an answer. Might not be the right answer, but obviously you get an answer. And you might think, well, I thought up that answer. It's like, well, that's really not much of an explanation because you don't know how you think. It's like I'm sitting there and thoughts appear in my head and that's how I think. It's like, that's a pretty shallow explanation. It's not much different than revelation. It's like you ask yourself the proper questions, you'll get the proper answers. If you ask the right question and you want the answers. Right, and those are not easy preconditions to set up because who knows, if you're sitting on the edge of your bed thinking, okay, what am I doing wrong? That's a hell of a question to ask. Because if you really want to know, you'll find out. And then you'll find out that you really didn't want to know. Because generally speaking, finding out what you're doing wrong is not a pleasant experience, and it means that you have to sacrifice part of yourself. Usually a burned out, stupid, bitter, corrupt, arrogant, nasty, vengeful part of yourself, but nonetheless part that you like. And so you can, I think that room for those incremental improvements exists within everyone's grasp. And I think that it's a humble thing to do, to ask how you could improve incrementally without interfering with anyone else, like it's your problem, not theirs. But I think that the consequences of maintained incremental improvement are anything but incremental. You get compound interest on incremental improvement. There's another rule in the New Testament called the Matthew Principle. Economists use it, and the rule is, to those who have everything, more will be given. And from those who have nothing, everything will be taken. It's actually a description of the way the world works, interestingly enough. You know that if you've ever played Monopoly, because that's what happens if you play Monopoly. And there's a reason for that. That's a deep reason. And it's a very harsh rule, because it means as you start to wander off the path, let's say, the probability that you will wander further off the path increases non-linearly. And that's a terrible thing to know. As you wander towards the edge, the probability that you'll fall off the cliff increases. And that's a statistical justification for the concept of hell. But as you improve, the probability that each improvement will produce a further improvement increases. And so perhaps the downside is the cataclysmic catastrophe that you can engage upon if you reproduce your moral failings, but the upside is that each improvement produces an increment in the probability of the next improvement. And I've seen that. It's a truism among behavioral psychologists. Although they don't generally phrase it that way. If you're a behavioral psychologist, and I am a behavioral psychologist, what you do is you find out what essentially you help a person establish their aim. Then you break down what they're trying to do into attainable units, and you negotiate with them. You say, well, look, well, they say, I'm not making use of my time very well, spending 3 hours a day playing video games. Okay, hypothetically, how much time would you like to spend playing video games? And they say, well, I could probably spend an hour a day without it interfering with the rest of my life. Which is kind of the issue, right? Because if you play video games, fine, but maybe 3 hours means that you're not doing your homework or something, and that's not a good game. So you say, okay, well, I want to play for an hour a day. It's like, okay, well, can you shift to an hour a day right now? And this is supposed to be an honest conversation. And the person says, no, I've tried that lots of times. Every time I try, I just fail. And so you don't say, well, quit failing, go play 1 hour a day, and the problem will be solved. That's a stupid strategy. You say, okay, well, look, you think about this, and don't agree to do this unless you think you will do it, because otherwise it's just a waste of both of our times. It's like, do you think that you could track how much time you spend playing video games for 1 week? Don't change anything. Just track it. And they think, yeah, I could probably do that, but I might miss a couple of days. And you think, okay, fine. So here's the deal. 5 out of the next 7 days, you just track how much time you spend playing video games. And the person says, I think I can do that. Because that's what you want them to say. You want them to succeed at the improvement. It's not much of an improvement, but it's something, right? Then they come back and they say, well, yeah, I was playing about 4 hours a day. And so you say, okay, well, fine, good work, man. You got it tracked. Now we know the parameters of your problem. It's actually a little worse than you thought, but at least you had enough sense to measure it. We know where you're at. Okay. Do you think you could cut that down to 3.5 hours every day? And the person thinks, no, I'm pretty weak-willed. I don't think I could manage that. You say, well, how about this? Do you think that 2 of the next 7 days you can only play for 3 hours? You think you can manage that? And you're not cynical about this. You're not insulting the person, any of that. It's like, because you don't care. All you care is that they make some incremental movement towards their goal. And the person thinks about that, if they have any sense, and they take their weakness into account, and they think, I think I could probably do that. And then they come back the next week, and they say, I managed to spend 3 hours a day playing video games for 3 days, and the rest were 4 hours. And you say, good work, man. You've just got rid of 25%, 12.5% of your problem. You're 1/8 of the way to fixing it in 1 week. And the person isn't going to be all that thrilled with themselves because they don't do the arithmetic and they don't do the projection. They think, well, I'm still pretty damn useless. I'm playing 25 hours worth of video games a week. It's nothing to pat myself on the back for. It's like, yes, it is. It's a marked, measurable improvement, and it's a move in the right direction. And then you say, okay, well, on the days you succeeded, how did you manage to succeed? And is there a way that you could do it for 4 days next week? How about that? Or maybe you could even try 5 days. You think you could do that? And then you also tell the person, look, the other thing you got to understand is you're not going to improve like this. You're going to improve like this. So some weeks you're going to come back and say, geez, I backslid completely and I played for 4 hours a day for 7 days. But it doesn't matter, because that doesn't mean you failed. It just means that you slid back. You want to calculate it over a month or something like that. And, generally speaking, a month later, the person's down to something like 2 hours a day, and you've figured out ways of filling their time in with something productive otherwise, and they're on their way. And the general consequence of that is that every time they manage an accomplishment, they get a little stronger in character, they get a little bit more confident in their ability, they get a little bit less racked with self-disgust, they get a little bit more hopeful about the future, and they get more confident that they can make another change. And if you're patient, and you have to be patient with yourself that way, it's like you reward those incremental improvements and you don't get all cynical about them, and you think, okay, just imagine what would happen if you kept doing that every week for 10 years. And the answer to that is, things would be so much better for you that you can't even imagine it with that much improvement, or maybe even with half that much improvement. And so that's a very good way of progressing.
Chẳng thể quên khi cơn mưa đêm lại về. Em nơi quên lời thề và ta như đông chìm sâu. Không còn mới em anh nhận màu. Em chỉ cần mơ đâu em chỉ còn là những cơn mưa vô giá. Cho bên mưa em không mơ anh. Anh một đêm mơ chỉ cần bên em không được cơn nhớ. Và chỉ có em không muốn nhớ. Và người ta bên nhau như ngã thơ. Muốn nhớ về say em chỉ có mấy em ở đây. Và anh như muốn chết đi nhưng không muốn em mơ mày. Tình yêu làm cho ta đau đầu. Không em như nằm mơ mộng. Anh như đeo mong cầu. Và mưa bên em ngủ sầu. Chắc có mai mai mà mơ. Chỉ có bên em nhưng đừng có mơ. Mà đã ra em muốn bên ai. Anh không mong gì hơn. Chỉ mong em sẽ ở đây ôm anh thật gần. Anh chỉ mong đôi ta được có nhau. Mà đừng em đâu anh có em. Một đêm bên anh có em. Ta sẽ trao nhau môi hôn thật sâu. Ôm anh.
Living life, every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days. Fuck me, I'm looking in the mirror. So foggy, but I've never seen clearer. I don't really think anyone can save me. And honestly, I'm not really sure I want saving. I like to be my own worst enemy. There's no risk if you don't try at anything. So I'ma just keep buying everything. See you in the next life, have to be a better me. I don't think that my head's on straight. Gotta flip it and grip it and go and get an x-ray. What's wrong with me? I just feel weight pushing on my chest and it squeezes till I suffocate. Better change my mindset, meditate. It's pretty cool that I'm alive and have better days. I could walk, see, hear, I should celebrate. Think I could change my mind, maybe elevate. Living life, every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days. Yeah, all I need are some better days. Cause all I want, and I pray, I believe in the better days. I'm kinda stuck between a rock and a hard place. Do I work hard or live at my pace? You're only young once, yeah that's all great. But I also want a future where I'm okay. Living life is doing lots of cocaine. Wait no, it's living with no shame. Wait no, it's sleeping in on Sundays. I guess it's different for each of us and that's okay. Well I just wanna be happy. How to get there? Glad that you asked me. I think it's different for everyone. Some of us need work, others need fun. Some of us need purpose to overcome. But try to do what you love when it's said and done. Cause there's so many differences in each of us. Trust your gut, it can show you what you want. Living life, every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days. Come at me and you will be replaced. They won't find a trace of you